Okay, I'm going to introduce my very special guest, Elizabeth Williams. You are a clinical therapist and you work in Arizona and you work with specializing in women's issues at Beautiful Mind Therapy. I love that name. I think that's gorgeous. And then you own a business, which is Better Me, Better We. You're a life coach, which I've
Yes.
been working with you and it's been fantastic. Highly recommend you guys go check her out. Okay. It's been wonderful. So it's March 1st. Happy Women's Month. So I'm very excited about that. So
Right.
you look beautiful, by the way. And thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you.
And we're
Thank
going
you.
to, yes, I'm so happy you're here. So we're going to talk about like self-love. So that's going to be that's a major thing I see in our communities, especially as like biracial people. We're going to focus on our issues and things that we need to be mentally, emotionally all healthy and full of self-love and be make sure we're taken care of because we have specific needs specializing us. So that's why I wanted to have you on so we could talk about that. So my first question is because like I said, it's like a layers, right? It's
Yeah,
like first layer, we got to learn how to accept ourselves. So I was
absolutely.
wondering, so finding self-acceptance as like a biracial person, which can be so confusing because it's like, we deal with like identity issues a lot, like who are we and where do we fit in and all these types of issues and stuff. So is there anything along, because you're a biracial woman, so
Yes.
that's why you have experience with this, I'm sure. So is there anything you would have any tips or anything about like finding like self-acceptance like a biracial person, and what would be like a good route to go on to like have that secure, like this is who I am, I know who I am, I love who I am, so we could just have that secure like foundation of like self-acceptance.
Oh boy, self-acceptance is such a loaded
Yeah.
topic, especially when it comes to biracial or mixed individuals.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I I would say first we have to really start with exploring our own identity. Like what truly is it that like explore all of your sides and really get a firm sense of who you are, what your identity is, what you like about it, your values, your beliefs, your morals. Like once we get that firmly set and established, then we can kind of start exploring all the other things. But that's the first part. And I
Mhm.
think with establishing that identity, we have to be willing to also validate our own feelings that come with it, right? So
Right.
I think a lot of times we will start exploring maybe different sides of us. We might find some things that we like, we might find some things that we don't like. And
Right.
like validating the negative feelings that might come with that, right? Of
Right.
in ourselves. So,
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's important to have a safe space, because it's like being able to open up and talk about these feelings, even if they're not positive, if they are negative, having that safe space, being able to open up and talk about those things without feeling like, oh no, you can't speak about that. Or that's so important, right? Like that is
great.
very important. Just having those spaces in order to be able to, because that's helped me a lot. That's why I've been so adamant about these communities, just having a space where, you can find people to relate to. So you could like
Absolutely.
feel like you're not alone, right? It's about feeling like you're not alone. So that's part of
Absolutely.
self acceptance too, right? Like feeling
Yes,
like there's
connection.
people we can connect to. That sense of
Absolutely.
connection is
Yep.
so important, right? Yes,
sharing
absolutely.
sharing your story too with like being able to share that with others and hear
Mhm.
what their journey was like, being able to relate to that journey. That's another big piece to know that okay, I'm not alone in this, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
this is what maybe this person did to work through it, and maybe this is what I can try. And so absolutely community is huge. I think community is one of the things I think we lack in the biracial
Exactly.
world, in that whole
Mhm.
space, right?
Right.
We don't have our own sense of community. And I think we try to seek that community in different spaces, oftentimes to find
Exactly.
maybe that isn't our community, or maybe it doesn't
Right.
feel like our
Exactly.
community. So
Right.
having that
So
community, I think, is a
true.
huge piece too.
Exactly. That sense of connection is everything, right? That sense of we
Absolutely.
do need that. We absolutely need that. So that goes to my next question. It's like, what was my next question? It says, oh, it's about building our self-esteem, right? Because that's what a community is supposed to be for, like having people around us to help like affirm our identity and help build
Mhm.
our sense of identity and our sense of self-esteem and help like mirror that back to us, right? So it's like, how do we make sure, because I've experienced this a lot in my journey, like being around people who try to like bring you down for your black side, or bring you down because you're half white, or like they don't, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, how do we make sure we're around people who are building our self-esteem? Like how do we make sure, like, I don't, it's really hard to be around people who doesn't accept half of me. You know what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
that's such a terrible experience, right? So it's like, if we don't feel accepted by others, it makes us not want to accept ourselves, right? So it's like we have to make sure we're around people who accept us fully, all of who we are, all of our culture, all of our heritage, all of us. So it's like, how do we make sure and like set those type of boundaries with people, making sure like, hey, I'm only going to be around people who respect me and who, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
how would we like that's something that's like tricky to navigate, because it's like, it's tricky, right? So is there any like tips or anything you would like go into that, like making sure around people who are really trying to help build our identity, build our self-esteem, and
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think that's one of the biggest pieces is being able to walk away. So we have the boundary, right? We know, okay, I need people to be this way around me. I only want to invite these people that uplift me, pour into me, encourage me. And if they're doing anything else than, if they're making me feel off in some sort of way, having the strength to be able to walk away from that person, that relationship, that organization, that whatever, right?
Yeah. Sorry.
So, and that's, I think, a big piece with boundaries is, we can establish them, we can state them, but I find that oftentimes people struggle with upholding them. And I think that's a big, big piece if we really want to create the space and the environment for ourselves that's a lot more empowering and loving.
Yes. Just really being strong in our boundaries, like make sure, hey, I respect myself, like having that sense of self-respect, right? That's something we need to work on, like respecting all of who we are, because I've heard people who don't like both sides of themselves. They feel disconnected from both sides of their heritage, and they just don't having that sense of self-respect, so you can enforce those boundaries and making sure, hey, I'm not tolerating this, I'm not tolerating from nobody. It don't matter who we are. Just that's so important, right? That's such a strong thing that we need to talk about more out loud, and making sure that we're sharing our knowledge with each other, because that's a big part of the community too. Like you said, like we're sharing, like this is what helped me get through this, and we're sharing the knowledge with each other. So that's a big one right there, like making sure we're enforcing boundaries. Because we talk about boundaries all the time, but just we don't talk about ways how we can make sure we enforce them. Like that's a big point right there. So that's something that, so what do you think, like some strategies you would think to like help like enforce those boundaries of making sure people are not disrespecting us or like trying to bring us down or anything? Is there any way like we could strengthen our boundaries and make sure?
I think a lot of that comes with, again, knowing who you are and what you want. And absolutely. I think like a big piece for the biracial community, again, is because we're always surrounded by individuals that want to put labels on us, want to put us in a role. Right. And I think being really firm with, okay, I want to create my own role, right? I want to create my own way of being. I think we need to focus on our own strengths to also help solidify that identity. So what is it that's unique about you, right? So I'm thinking if someone is attacking you and trying to make you feel bad about yourself, if the stronger you are, the less they're going to infiltrate that.
I love that.
So, I love that. And I would say this too, to a lot of, like, we're pretty cool people.
Oh, amazing. I absolutely agree.
If I have to say, I think, being mixed, being biracial, whatever term you want to use, we have to start looking at the strengths of that, right?
Yeah.
For me, I love having knowledge of two different worlds, or really three. I have three. But I love having the knowledge. I've always been a big fan of culture and like learning different ways of beings and things like that. And that's a strength, like being able to navigate two different worlds, being able to connect to two different worlds. We're kind of like the bridge to me of society, and that we can see both sides very clearly. And that's a strength. So maybe sitting with yourself and taking time to say, okay, what does it mean to be biracial? How is this empowering? How is this a strength of mine? What skills do I have from this? I think if we can look at the positives and strengthen our own beliefs around being biracial and not what society wants us to believe, the better.
That is so important, like redefining things for ourselves, because we do take in what we internalize society's, what they say about being biracial. Oh, you'll never fit in. Oh, you'll never, all these different things. You're too black for this or too white for this. Like all these different narratives, we do internalize it instead of trying to sit down and figure out our own experience, because these are coming from people who don't even have that experience, right? So it's like that's such a great point. I really love that. That's very enlightening to like make sure we sit down and define what it is for us to be biracial, and making sure we look at the strengths and the beauty of it, so we can have some pride in it, so we don't let nobody disrespect us about it, right? I love that. I love that so much. I think that is so empowering. That's very empowering. I love that so much. I I think that is amazing. So my next question would be like tips on like how do we build that positive self-image and make sure that they do have that self-respect, that sense of pride, that sense of like, but I think you covered it already. That's kind of it, just kind of sitting with ourselves and kind of figuring out, hey, what does this mean to me? What is my experience like? What is the beauties? What is the strengths in it? So that's the beautiful thing of building like a positive self-image and not taking in like society's definitions and their narratives about what it is. So it's
Absolutely.
like I love that. I love that.
I have a way of really looking at this, and I like to always like draw everything down to like relationships, because to me everything is relationships. And so I often think of like a lot of the biracial community tends to be the people pleasers of society.
So
right?
true. So true. We want to, because we want to fit in so bad. We want to like, it's like we try to be chameleons, right? Like the little code switching thing. Like we want to fit in here, so we'll try to like conform and then try to do everything right to try to make this group happy or make this group happy, so they can feel like, it's a big thing. I've dealt with those type of issues so much. Like
I have too,
because it's a detrimental thing, right? Because you lose your sense of authenticity, because you want to just make other people happy. So that's a big thing. That's such a big thing. So yeah,
I would say take that and think about that in a family unit, right? So I'm just going to do a traditional nuclear family of like mom, dad, kids, right?
Yeah.
If the kids are in a family where, like, say the parents, mom and dad, are always at it, they're always fighting. And if they're always at it and fighting, right, they're not giving that emotional support to the kids. They're not, they might be even lashing out towards the kids and saying hurtful things towards the kids. The kids are feeling like, oh gosh, how do I make peace? How do I make mom happy? How do I make dad happy? Oh no, whose side do I choose? Right? So I think, to me, this is how I look at it, but I feel like biracials are kind of like that in society.
Yes.
We have, and a lot of times biracials, typical would be like, say, white, black, right? And we have a lot of discord between the white population, the black population.
Oh, it's a hard
and then here us biracials are like, okay, well, whose side do I choose? How do I make sure there's peace? Like, it's kind of very similar if you really think about it.
And we just want peace, right? We like peace seekers, like we want.
Right. In doing that, we lose our identity.
Yes.
In doing that, we disconnect from our emotional self. Exactly. And so I would say one way to start working on that is to think about the family where the kids are like suffering. What would you say to those children? How would you pour into those kids? How would you love on those kids, right? Everything you would do to those kids, you do to yourself.
Exactly. You know what? You gave me a realization. It's like we have to realize, because it's not their fault. It's not their fault, because we take the blame for everything. It's like, oh, because you know how kids, like if like kids, their parents divorce, they feel like it's their fault.
Yes.
Right. So that's exactly what we do. We feel like it's our responsibility to fix everything between the white and black community. We got to make sure we're fixing everything. But it's like, we got to realize this is not our fault. Like, we can't take that on, we really can't. It's unfair to us. It's unfair to us, and it's
absolutely.
Yeah, it's like a huge burden. We got to like put it down on the ground. Like, we have to, just make sure we're our best selves. We're our best lives. We can't fix these type of problems that we didn't create in the first place. You
got it.
But society likes to do that a lot too. Like to put it like, oh, biracial. Remember they said that about Obama. He's going to bring the white and black people together. He's going to do this. Like, it's like, I feel like it's such a big responsibility, for us. And we do the best we can. We do want to like bring peace. We don't want to cause more strife but at the same time, we got to realize it's not our fault. So, you know what I'm saying? And put it down and like, our inner child, right? That's like our inner child. We have to make sure hey, it's not your fault. You're loved exactly who you are right now. You don't have to, because we want to do that to feel accepted, right? It's like, oh, if these people have peace between each other, then we'll be loved and accepted.
And feel safe. Yeah.
Right. And you feel safe. And it's like, no, you're safe and loved and accepted how you are right now. You don't have to do it. Right. So that's you just gave me a huge realization right now. Like,
but you're absolutely right. We're always people pleasing, picking up burdens that aren't ours. We want to fix it. And I think that it's too much. We can't fix these level of issues. And I think what we need to do is focus on fixing our own first and then helping where we can.
Exactly. Because I think we use that as a way to avoid our own issues sometimes too. You know,
Yeah.
it's like we want to fix like all these other issues in different communities, but it's like, no, we have our own issues that we need to, and it's like I think we try to avoid it because there's not that many resources and stuff out there to get help to like for
Yeah.
our own issues too. So it's like now that that's why I'm so happy you're here, so we can help spread the awareness. That's what my channel is all about. Hopefully we could start, having these conversations more. And so like in the mental health field, we could have more resources. So we could have these type of issues like identity affirming, so we could be strong in who we are. Not there's so many things that we need to, like I said, address. But yeah,
Absolutely.
that's such a great point you brought up. Like such a great point. So I'm gonna go to my next question. My next question was about spreading awareness in the mental
Oh,
health field. Right?
okay.
That was the next question. So my next question was like, how can we get that started, like in the mental health field? Like, how would we like? Okay, can we start locally, like in my area, right? If I go to a therapist and I start like opening up about biracial issues, would that like help like spread awareness? Like, hey, this is a underserved population, a community that's kind of left out a little bit. So,
Yeah.
start spreading awareness in the mental health field. That like, hey,
Yes.
like these children that are coming up, a lot of us come up in unstable homes, like you said, because like the divorce rate between like interracial marriages is very high.
Yep.
So a lot of us do come from those like unstable homes that we're like torn between two worlds, and it's like we're kind of like, there's a lot of things going on there that really we need to explore and have more understanding about, right? So it's like, so what are some tips about like spreading the awareness and like in the mental health field? Will we start locally, or how would we? Because I see online, I think there is some people who focus on like biracial and multicultural issues online a little bit. So maybe it's just about like just having like a little, like just having a little place, like something like a little page or something where we can have like the resources out there. Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're right. You're right on track. I would say a lot of our mental health organizations, they usually have different chapters in each state. So, like marriage and family therapy, children's play therapy, variety of different ones. But starting there, finding local chapters, and it could be as simple as, these are some resources for, biracial or mixed individuals that you might come across that might be helpful, right? And just kind of even spreading some more knowledge with those organizations would be huge. I know that there's been a huge push within the recent years of a lot more just like racial issues being a key area that a lot of clinicians will specialize in. So they've got that knowledge and that push. And I think that could also be kind of the gateway to bring in, okay, well, let's start talking about a diverse, more inclusive group of racial issues. I know, I mean, there's so many, when you were saying earlier, like a lot of the divorce rates between, the biracial or the Black and white and other mixed individual adults and moms and dads, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's also a large percentage of us that are in foster care systems.
Yes,
And
exactly. Very much so.
full
Yes.
of issues that comes with that too, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
even that can be another starting ground of like, okay, maybe we start reaching out to foster care agencies to kind of also the clinicians that work with them, get them more aware and on board with, what are some of the needs with this population. So definitely educating mental health professionals, marketing out to mental health organizations would be huge. Attending conferences would be great to kind of get the word out there. Just sharing our stories. I know I'm hearing and seeing a lot more stories like on TikToks and the Instagrams and things like that. I think that's helpful too. That brings awareness. So the more channels like this, where we're talking about some of these issues, I think are seriously huge. That's how I found you. And I was like, this is what we need. Like, we need to hear this. We need to hear the voice of everyone so that we can better identify, well, what are the needs of this group and how can we better serve? Absolutely.
Exactly. So there's something in the mental health field, like people, like, when you go and you want to request like a person of color as a therapist or something, but usually we get hooked up with like a Black therapist, but I think there's an issue with that because, I don't expect, because a lot of Black people, they speak up about this. So like, we can't really relate to biracial issues, it's like, like monoracial people. That's what I'm saying. Like people who are monoracially white or monoracially Black, who got like two Black. It's like, we can't expect them because because they speak up about this. It's like, hey, we can't expect to relate to biracial issues at all because we don't have that experience, right? So it's like that's kind of hard for us to find like a specific biracial therapist. So
Yeah.
I think that would be the number one thing, if we could just spread awareness about, hey, we would like to request a biracial therapist who understands, who actually relates to, like, who actually has the experience, of like, something. So that would be like the number one. If we could normalize that, because it's about just normalizing our existence. Right? It's like, hey, we exist. We're not just some little speck that, like, hey, we exist. We're human beings. We deserve to our community, our needs deserve to be fulfilled, like our mental health. We want to be mentally healthy. We want to be emotionally healthy, and we deserve people who are going to help serve us in that area, right? So it's like, that's what that's about. Like, I would love to see more, like, just biracial therapy, especially locally. It's kind of still like, I think online is, I love that we have these resources online, so we can have more people to like reach out to and stuff. So I think that's a beautiful thing. And yeah, would you be open to that? Like, have you ever worked with somebody like as like a biracial person, like one-on-one? Have you ever been open to doing stuff like that? Like, what's your opinion about that?
Absolutely. I've got clients now that are biracial and they
I
feel
love that.
comfortable, and absolutely. I don't, obviously I am. So I feel like I can definitely, I honestly feel like that's most likely why they may have chosen me too, just because they have that comfortability there. So I definitely agree with you. I think we have to have, first of all, I always say as a counselor, you need to be working with someone you feel very comfortable with. And a lot of times that is with who you identify with.
Exactly.
Well, I'm completely with you on that. And I would say another place to start too would be directories, because I know a lot of people find their counselors through, like, the search directories, Psychology Today, and, other directories. And if they could have filters that say biracial identifying, they have it for a bunch of others. So it would be nice to be able to add that.
Yeah, maybe we could like write letters or something, like email them, or maybe we could start like, hey, requesting these type of things to these, so they could add it on, just so we
Absolutely.
could know, hey, we need these type of services for us. And yeah, definitely. I definitely think that's gonna be a great thing. I'm gonna probably put a link below about where we could like get resources and stuff like that for. So that's a great thing to be aware of. I didn't know that. I did not know that. So that's good.
The more
that's
demand, the better, right? If they've got more people saying, hey, we want to find these types of identifying therapists, the better. They'll add it. Over the past few years, I've seen a lot more things in the search engines added for just racial issues in and of itself. We could add this too. So
exactly, I think so. Yeah, and it's our responsibility to actually want and create the demand for it, right? It's definitely our responsibility. We can't just, because we've had these conversations in these communities a lot, how we don't have we don't have therapists that understand our issues, but it's like, now it's like we got to take action about that. We can't just sit around and just like not do anything about it. We got to make sure, hey, we're taking the appropriate action to make sure that these things are available to us. So that's on us. Nobody's gonna do it for us. Like, that's something we always talk about. Nobody's gonna do it for us. Our parents didn't do it. We have to do it. It's our responsibility to make sure that we have these things, and for the next generation. So that's what it's all about, making sure that the kids that are coming up, because we're such a rapid growing population. It's like a population boom of us. So it's like, we got to make sure we're putting in the work to make sure the kids and stuff, they don't have to put in the work. We're doing it for them, so they can have these things in case. But it comes back to parenting too, right? Because it's like, if the parents really would they need this type of services, do you think? Or is it's just like a little extra help? Because my kids, I really want to instill them a sense of pride. Like, if we had that from the get-go, right, maybe they wouldn't need it, but we can't expect that. But it is a big part of the parents' responsibility to make sure that they're instilling these things. But a lot of us, unfortunately, we live in the real world, right? That's not going to happen for a lot of us. So it's okay. It's nothing wrong with. I love that nowadays we're normalizing like mental health. There's no stigma about it. It's not something, oh, you're crazy. It's not no weakness. There's nothing wrong with like need mental. I need mental health. We all need. It's just like physical health, right? It's just like something, you're taking care of your physical health. It should be just as normalized. And I love that. Like, it makes me so happy that we're not, because I've seen like my father, he dealt with a lot of mental health issues, and he was so stigmatized for it. Like, oh, it was like he was like the black sheep of the family. So I was scared. That made me scared to not want to like reach out, or maybe want to hide and mask like my mental health stuff. So I'm just grateful that we're out here and talking about it, just loud and proud, and just like, hey, there's nothing wrong with that, like, at all. So
Absolutely. And we don't bite. We're actually pretty cool.
Exactly. There's so many wonderful people in the mental health field that are so supportive and wonderful, and it's like it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. I just want to encourage everybody who needs the help, who's been trying to get there. I just support that for you. I want to be there to support people, and I hope people watching this will understand that it's okay. And there's resources out there. There's people out there that are being willing to help you, that are going to be there for you every step of the way, who are going to be wonderful, amazing supporters of your life, right? So
Yes.
that's
You brought up a great point about parents. I think, because you're right, I think therapy can be used in conjunction, but I think the parents could use some guidance too. And I think so even if parents came and said, hey, you're a biracially identifying therapist, I really need some tips, right? I need some help, some guidance here. Absolutely. That would be something that I think we should definitely be open to. There's a really good psychologist that's on Instagram. I think she goes by Dr. Jen Psych, I think. Her page is phenomenal. And she actually does coaching for parents of biracial children. So absolutely.
Oh my God. I got you out. See, that's cool. I did not know that. I did not know that. See, that's what it's all about. Spreading awareness. I'm gonna put her link down. I'm gonna find her or her link down so people will know about her, so they can have those type of access to her in case they need those type of things.
Perfect.
So that is amazing. All right, let's start. Let's go to the next question. So this is it's kind of a heavy topic, but this is a serious issue that definitely affects our community. So we definitely do have like higher rates of suicide within our population, right? Within our communities. And where do you think, what kind of advice would you give to like somebody who's on that brink? Because I've been there. I know I have. Like, I've talked about it, me being suicidal, me feeling lonely, lost, and depressed. And I've been there. I know a lot of people in my community, they talk about like, being on that brink. So it's like some people, they do end up committing suicide. And it's a horrible thing that's not talked about at all in our community. And it's like, it's swept under the rug. And it's very sad. It's a very, very sad thing. And I only know about it. You know how it's crazy? I only knew about this because it was some crazy like white supremacists. They're like, oh, you biracial people don't need to exist because you guys have such high rates of suicide. And I was like, what? And I actually researched it, and we do have really high rates of suicide. And they were trying to weaponize that against us, saying that, oh, we don't need to exist because of that reason. But I'm like, no, we need to take that and actually figure out what is the cause, what is the root cause of this, so we can prevent that in many biracial people and feel like. So what are some tips about like the suicide topic? Because it's something I'm really passionate about. I want people to be here. I want people to love their life. Like, it's a beautiful, wonderful thing being a biracial. We're human beings, have humans experiences, and I just want people to be happy. Like, I just want to see, I don't want them to feel depressed or sad because they are biracial. I think that's the worst things.
That breaks my heart.
It breaks my heart too.
First, I would say if we're on to that point, to me, I don't, and any clinician's not going to take that lightly, that we would immediately say, first, let's get you stable. So crisis centers are in every state. We can, obviously get you to a safe place to get you more stabilized, but working with a professional, really, because I think what we need to do is obviously, explore a lot of the things that are contributing to the depression, that's contributing to the suicide. But I also think we need to help establish that identity we were talking about earlier, and really becoming strong in that, recognizing the strengths and the positives of being biracial, right? So really, at this point, I would say working with a professional to really sift through the issues that have come up and that you've experienced, along with solidifying and building your self-identity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's so important. Just know that they're loved and they're amazing and they're special as they are. And then, I definitely agree. We do need the professional help. Just know that you're worth it, right?
Yeah.
You're absolutely worth it, because I've heard people say they feel worthless because of their mixed race. They feel worthless in society and they feel like less valued in society. But that's all false. That's not true.
Right.
You're just as worth, you're just as valuable as any other human being on this earth. And I've had to tell people that, I'm not it's hard because, you know, we want to have that sense of community, but we're not mental health professionals ourselves. But all we can do is speak from our experience and try to, you know, help people, uplift people as much as we can. But that's why we do need that professional help, though, who are mental health professionals who can really get to the root cause of what's causing these things. And, you know, all we can do is support people, right, through those types of things, right? All we can do is try to help uplift them. So what are some tips on that? Like, people who are feeling like, how can we be a good support to those type of people who feel like worthless and feel bad about, you know, like, well, how can we, I really want to support people like this in the community. Yeah.
We can, well, one, offering a listening ear.
Yes.
Right. The other one, I would say, when we are talking with them, to help them challenge some of those negative thoughts.
I like that.
A lot of times depression comes from, again, to me, a lot of stuck, unresolved feelings and emotions. A lot of them, most of them negative. And we need to be able to challenge that. I think a lot, and just, if I'm thinking about just the biracial community in and of itself, we internalize so much of society's negative messages. So it doesn't surprise me that we have high rates, right, of suicide. So we need to challenge that. You know, how are we internalizing these messages? Is this message even true? Let's figure out, okay, what really is, again, my beliefs about this? You know, is this a belief that I've created, or is this something that's been told to me? Is this something that's been put on me? And helping them maybe challenge some of those negative beliefs. And if they don't have any supportive people around, again, a therapist, even life coaches can help with challenging some of those things. The other thing I would say is, you know, if you're in person with someone, is encouraging them to be active. Like, let's go for a walk and talk, right? Let's watch our favorite movie, just kind of being in communion with someone, being, again, that source of support, that friendly presence. A lot of times people just want people to sit with them and just watch TV, or play a game, or, you know, drink a coffee with, right? And so having that connection, I think, is a big piece too.
I love that. Yeah, that sense of connection is so important, because I think that's when we're at our lowest. We feel so disconnected from everyone around us, and just trying to, like, reestablish that sense of, hey, you know, I'm here with you right now. You know, you're not alone. So I love that. I love that. It's very sad, and I do want. That's why I hope in the future that these things they get researched more, right? And then we could absolutely get to the root cause of it. So these things, but we have to talk about it, right? It's something that we have to really address and face, right? And that's something that's happening within our community. And it's, you know, I don't want to sweep it under the rug, like, oh, this is
correct.
But I want to bring it to light. I want to be like, hey, this is all happening. So we're going to, all of us come together. Let's all put our heads together and figure out how can we stop this, right? So that's something that, that's something I'm very adamant about.
Community is huge. Community is huge with depression, because, again, that's one of the underlying feelings, is like, I feel so alone. And sometimes it can feel like I'm in a room full of people, but no one sees me, no one hears, like I'm still alone, right? Exactly. So just kind of constantly being that source of connection. And again, it doesn't have to be always exchanging words, but just knowing that they're there, or have someone that they can count on, rely on, speak to if they need to. Again, having some crisis numbers and things on hand, which, again, I can give you some.
Yeah, I'm gonna put all the links. Everything, we're gonna have everything good. We're gonna make sure we put resources down for people who are part of this conversation, who are watching this, and it's very important. I'm very grateful for you and everybody watching to just spread awareness about this, and just know that we're really amazing. We deserve to take care of ourselves, right?
Yes.
Care of ourselves. And a part of that is like you said, challenging those beliefs.
Yes.
And making sure we're deprogramming ourselves, because it's like a subconscious thing. Like, we just automatically pick up on these beliefs, and then that's how some people base their identity around that. Because I heard somebody say in this community, it's like, people think our identity is no identity, right? So that's something we need to challenge. Like, hey, we do have an identity. We know who we are. Like, we're so much more than just our race, right? We're not so much more than right? We're so much more than that. Like, there's so many amazing things about us. Like, we have characteristics. We have so many things that are way deeper than just what our two races are. We're multiracial, or we're deeper than that. You know, we have amazing internal lives that we want to express, and there's so much more to us, right? So I think that's so important, knowing we're so much more than how we racially identify, right? I think that's
So
a
glad
big,
you said that. So I wanted to bring that point up too, because yes, we
yeah,
are more, quite frankly,
yeah.
sometimes I get tired of talking about race.
I know. I totally understand that. I totally understand that. And it's like, I do think that's something I feel like we're called to like kind of rise above that a little bit more, because we can't,
Yes.
right? We're called to like rise above that, because it confuses us. Like as biracial people, it's like all these different categories, and like everybody's all, segregated, and you're this, you're this, you're this. But it's like, I think that's one of our strengths, that we see through that, we see
Yep.
to like who people truly are as like an individual, as a person, beyond how they like, we know like their name, like who they really are versus how they like racial. We're not going to label or judge people based on that, because we don't, because it's like, since people have a hard time categorizing us and putting like a label on us, I think that's an advantage, honestly.
That's a strength. Absolutely.
I think that's the thing. We get to identify and build our identity based off who we are as an individual, right? I think that's a positive thing. I love that. I love being like an individual. I love being me. I love not having these little labels and I don't like to put labels on other people. Oh, you're supposed to act like this because you're this race and all that stuff. I think that's I think that's the beauty of it. Like we get to rise above it a little bit, so we don't have to be caught up in that too much, So I absolutely think that's a beautiful thing about, our experience, right? We're kind of a step ahead of it. Like we're not going to get caught up in that too much, Like I do think that we have specific issues that we need to face, that face our community of our mixture. But other than that, it's like when I'm in the real world, I just like to look at people individually and just kind of judge them by that, like, and not really care about all these racial categories. And I don't really care, you know what I'm saying? So I love that about, I love that about our experience. I think that's a beautiful thing, really.
It's absolutely a beautiful strength. And some questions I would say, to just because I so love that you brought that up, of we are more than just our race, start asking ourselves questions like, what, like doing a really deep dive to deprogram ourselves of what beliefs have I truly internalized? What beliefs am I upholding because I've internalized that, right? Who am I outside of my race? Like what else defines me, right? Like let's draw a big picture, a big pie chart, or whatever it is you want to do, that list all the things that you love about yourself that makes you unique. And start focusing on those, start bringing those out more than your race, right? Let's put the focus on it. Everybody wants to focus on the race piece, but we don't have to. We don't have to do as they say. We can challenge that. Absolutely.
Because you're making me realize right now, that's an internalized belief that I have. It's like race is super, especially living in America, right? Where it's like always talked about, always at the forefront, everything. And it's like, that's something I internalized. It's like, oh, race has to be super important for some reason, right? So I guess, but it's like, I could challenge that. Like, why is it so important? I can get like some, like, I thought about this before, like in some areas, like medical issues, like affect, like, some medical issues affect a certain race more than others. But other than that, when it comes to like who you are as a human being, like, why is it so important that, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, those are some those are some beliefs that we should challenge. Like, I think that's what we're, a big part of our experience. We do challenge a lot of things, because you know how we live in like a very racially binary system. It's like you're either this or this, but we naturally challenge all that. Hey, we're not this or that. We're this and that. Right? We are so much more than just this little box or this little box. So it's something we naturally do challenge these things. I think it's for the better too. Make people think more broad about what this is. There's a lot of outdated beliefs that we challenge just naturally, right? So I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that is an awesome
thing. Live it.
We can love it.
We can model it. That's a strength. Let's embrace that.
I love it. Yeah. I love it, and it's just because when we do try to live within these outdated belief systems, I do think that causes a lot of depression, right?
Yes. Yep.
It does. It causes us a lot of depression. Oh, that's when we'll never fit in this box or this box. So that means we have no place in the world. But it's like, no, we could challenge that. We do have a place. We obviously exist. So we're here for a reason, right? So it's like, these are outdated beliefs that don't serve nobody, that don't serve us, that don't serve nobody. So it's like, it's about updating our belief system, right? I think that, yes, right?
We are the rebels moving to the beat of our own drum.
Yes,
I love it.
Absolutely. I love that so much.
I did want to quickly add, just for depression, really quick, another quick tip. And I share this with all of my clients always. You'll see thousands of studies at this point. Self-care, and self-care in the way of I want to highlight exercise, movement, physical activity, because there are too many studies out there now that support exercise having the same effects on the mind as, say, taking an antidepressant. Now, of course, I'm not telling anyone out there to not take your antidepressants because I'm going walking. I'm not saying that. Follow your doctor's orders, but just know that it can definitely help. I don't know all the scientific, I'm not a doctor, but it does release a lot of the same chemicals and things that can be very effective in decreasing depression. So start there too. I mentioned walk and talks with individuals. Do it. Call up a friend, call up a sister, a coworker, go for that walk and talk if you want, but you'll see the effects over time.
I love that. Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. Because, especially quarantine, everyone was just sitting still.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of depression came up. It was like, oh man. But as soon as everything started opening back up and got a little bit more active, I've been feeling better. I've been feeling, good. I totally agree with that. I think being active, being physically, taking care of our physical body, physical and our body is like connected.
Yes.
Right. So it's like we're taking care of our physical body, we're taking care of our mental body. And that's what we want, right?
Absolutely. Emotions are stored in our muscles. If we're not moving our muscles, it's just going to be stuck energy, which leads to depression.
Yes, that tension, right? So that's good. That's actually, I didn't know that. What? Because I know that, like, when you feel like anxiety is in your stomach sometimes and you like tense up. So it's like, so that'll help relieve like that sort of like anxiety and stuff like that, right?
There's somatic therapy often will highlight body movements to help. So like a lot of yoga, people will use yoga as an example where they're, having the different movements and postures and then breathing through them just to, again, kind of release the energy that's stuck in those muscles. So, yeah.
I'm going to try that out because, I do tense up a lot and I do need to like, let it all out.
Let it all out. Is huge, especially for anxieties. Yes.
Yes, breathing techniques. Absolutely. So that actually, I got a pop-up question a little bit that you kind of made me think of randomly. But what about like social anxiety? Because I deal with that a little bit too, like feeling comfortable in my own skin. You know what I'm saying? So is there any tips about like social anxiety and like social settings? Because that's something we deal with too, like being like I'm trying to overcome this because look, here's a belief that I want to challenge. Like being different is bad, right? Because it's like we're usually like, if I go to a family reunion, I was like on my white side, it's like I'm the only like brown person there, right? And then on my black side, I'm the only mixed person there, right? So it's like it's like our attitude about it. If I sit here and think, oh, I'm different from everybody, and that's a bad thing, that's gonna make me sad, right? But it's like I really want to challenge that belief that being different is wrong or bad, right? There's nothing wrong with like not looking like everybody else in the room, right? So it's like there's nothing wrong with that because that's usually where we are. Like usually, unless you live in like a very diverse area, you're gonna be the only mixed person wherever you go. Like that's kind of my experience. Wherever I go, I'll be like the only mixed person there. Yeah. So I had to overcome like feeling like, oh, I'm different, So that's something I really want to challenge our beliefs on. Being different is amazing. Okay, being different and standing out it's a beautiful thing. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a cool experience. So there's nothing. It doesn't mean you don't fit in. It doesn't mean nothing. It just means because it's like our meanings we give to things, right? Of how we narrate. Like, what are we giving this meaning to that we look different than everybody else in the room, right?
You got it.
So it don't have to be a bad thing. It does not have to be a negative thing. Like, oh, they're gonna judge me because I'm this and that. It's like no, it's like a social anxiety thing because it is.
It's the body trying to, or the brain's trying to protect from. Okay, we already know when we go in this setting, we're gonna feel off, and we're gonna, so let's cause all these negative thoughts so that she doesn't go to the thing, and then
exactly.
And really, you're right. It's all from negative thoughts. We're kind of hyping up the situation probably more than what we need to. And I do what I call fact check, so whatever the thought we're having, let's check the facts on it. Is it true? What's true about it? What's false about it? 10 times out of 10, practically, we're going to be able to see, okay, this thought is false. And so we do it anyway. And what I would say, another thing is we have to be, again, very solid in our identity to be able to feel confident in any setting that we're in. If we're not solid in who we are, it is going to be very difficult to feel comfortable in any place. So doing the work on that as well, fact checking the thoughts that we're having, and then doing the thing anyway to prove to yourself even more that it's okay, right? The more experiences we have that prove those thoughts wrong, the more we can change that programming.
That is beautiful, because that's a fantastic way to not feed like energy into these negative thoughts and see if they're true or not. Yeah. I love that. I'm going to use that. I think that is an amazing tool. I love that. I love that. That's perfect, because, I feel like I missed out on a lot of good connections because I'm scared, because I'm like, oh, they're going to judge me. They're not going to accept me because I'm this. I'm not the same as them. So they're not going to accept me. Or I've done that a lot, and I feel like I've missed out on a lot of good friendships and a lot of good, things. And it's like, I got to start fact checking it. Is this true?
Right.
Because that's not going to be true, right? So it's like, I don't want to keep missing out on building connections because my brain's scared of rejection, right?
Yes.
So that's something I really want to start doing, fact checking these types of things to make sure. So I can start building these connections, not just people who are biracial, but anybody, right?
Correct.
That's the beauty about we should be able to form those type of connections. But since I started believing, oh, race is so important, they're not going to like me because my race is different, that makes me not want to form those connections with people. But it's like that I got to challenge that. I'd be like, hey, that's not true. It's not true. Like, I can, because as a kid, like, it was not a big deal at all. Like, as a kid, like, who cares, right?
Yeah.
And then become adults, and then all these crazy different belief systems we take on, and it limits us. It's just so limiting. And it's like, I don't want to be limited by these belief systems anymore. So,
and we got to be careful with what we give into with beliefs, right? Because every time we give into a belief that's not true, we are just further. I think of what we're doing is kind of like, the worn paths. You keep walking it, it just gets worn and more and more.
Right.
The more we keep doing the thing that's not true, right? Or having that belief, and then, I'm not going to go. The more we do that, we're just solidifying that belief for ourselves. Exactly. And then we're also programming the subconscious mind to say, let's not go. As soon as that feeling comes up, let's not go. We're kind of training ourselves to think less of ourselves. We're not worthy. To confirm this belief to be true every time we give in. So that we do have to really force ourselves to do the exact opposite to give our subconscious mind the exact opposite message.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I want us to live full, beautiful, big lives and not have any like negative belief systems holding us back. Right. So it's like, that's what it's all about, challenging those so we can live our best, most beautiful life that we can, because we deserve it. We're amazing people. So absolutely. Absolutely. This is so helpful to me. You have no idea. You have no idea.
Good.
This is amazing. You're so amazing. Everybody, make sure y'all check her out. Like, seriously, she's awesome. Okay. Absolutely. Okay. Let me go to my so my next question was about finding wholeness in who we are, because it's so frustrating to always feel like you're half and half. Like I'm half of this. How do we find like a sense of like wholeness? Like, I want to be like a whole human, I think, but it goes back to what you said. I think you answered it, like challenging those belief systems, right? It's about doing that. It's about like challenging. I'm a whole human being. I'm not half or half. I'm whole how I am, right? So what are some tips on like finding wholeness, like finding like sense of wholeness?
So definitely going back. So the common theme I think today is solidifying your identity.
Yes.
Because we can only feel whole once again we know who we are and we love every piece of ourselves, right? That's when we have true wholeness within, and we're not looking for that validation or that piece outside of us. Once we start doing that, we get into trouble, right? So I would say number one, for wholeness, we have to be able to figure out who it is, like, who am I again outside of this race? What makes me me? What do I love about myself? What would I, if I was in a new relationship or something, that I am not changing this about me, like it has to be that. Like, I love this about me so much. Seek out others who again share your same experience. So again, building that community, having these conversations, being on platforms like this is huge, again, because that builds wholeness, that builds connection, challenging a lot of the societal stereotypes and prejudices, right? Really standing up for who you are, what you want your role to be, redefining that. Like, again, they always want to kind of put the role of like, this is your place in society. And let's challenge that, right? Let's redefine our roles for ourselves and own that. Obviously, practicing self-care is huge, making sure we're taking care of ourselves. And then just celebrating who you are.
I love
Fall
that.
in love with yourself. And again, or what I was saying earlier, like, what are some things about you that you're just like, I love this. I have a quirky sense of humor, but I love that about myself, right? Like, it's that. So celebrating you and all of your uniqueness, I think is huge.
I'm gonna start practicing that, celebrating myself, because I love that. And you brought up a big point about validation, learning how to be self-validated and not always looking for external, because that's something that's a big part of like people pleasing, right? Always looking for that external validation of like, oh, did I do this right? Oh, am I? So just being self-validating and like who you are. It's like it's just an inner journey, right? An inner journey of like discovering who you are, and nobody could do it for you. Nobody else could say who you are. Nobody else could tell you who you are. You can't find it anywhere else but within you, right?
Yes.
So that's a big part of our journey, and it's a beautiful thing. I think everybody should do that, not just like biracial people, of course, but
Correct.
it's a beautiful thing that we because a lot of people, that's the thing about being biracial, a lot of people do cling to their race as like their whole life. This is all of who I am, this is my personality, this is everything. But it's like we don't really have that option, because it's like there's so much. So it's like we have to kind of go in with internal and into ourselves and finding who we are on a deeper level, right? So that's a beautiful thing. I think that's a beautiful, wonderful thing, that, and then finding that self-love, because and it's like knowledge of self, like learning who you are so you can love who you are, right?
Yes.
So I think that's such a beautiful journey that I really want to encourage everybody to partake in. And there's so many wonderful, supportive people like you who, like, having these types of conversations, I'm realizing so many things, and it's helping me go deeper within myself and learning and like figuring out, oh, this is what I could be doing, and this is who I am. And it's just a beautiful thing. Like, I think it's absolutely just makes me happy. Okay?
Good.
It makes me really happy. And this whole conversation was just fantastic. I think it was really, really good, and I'm really happy. And yeah, I wanted to say one thing about, let me see, about just self-love. It always goes back to self-love, right? And it goes back to finding your identity.
Yeah.
And then loving who you are. And it's a choice, isn't it? It's a choice to like really choose to love yourself.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a big choice. So we have that power, like taking our power back and choosing what's good for us, and choosing. But I wanted to, there was the one thing I just remembered. That another belief system I do want us to challenge is this whole racial hierarchy system. You know how like we live in like a society that tells you, oh, if you're black, you're at the bottom, if you're mixed, you're in the middle, and then you're white. I want us to challenge that whole thing, because like you said, it's like we live in a society that likes to tell us like who I did internalize that belief. I felt like I was like lower, like, oh, I'm just worthless in society, and I'm just lower at the bottom. So it's like I think that's the biggest thing that we need to challenge, that whole racial hierarchy system, right?
Yep.
I think that we can't let people tell us our place in society. Like, we get to determine and choose for ourselves our place in society, exactly where we want to be at. And it's not determined by what we look like or our race or nothing like that, right? It's
absolutely
determined by our values, our morals, our character, our choices in life that we're in control of, not stuff that we're not in control of whatsoever. So that's a big thing too, like taking back power, what we're in control of, right?
Absolutely. Self-empowerment and being intentional about the things that we want to take control of too. So when I'm thinking of self-love as well, I'm thinking, let's do a whole life overhaul. Like, who are your friends? Who are the family? Like, are these people supportive? Are they pouring into you? Are they encouraging you, uplifting you? If not, maybe we need to look at that. My boundaries are really tight, so I'm real quick to, but just like, let's do a friend overhaul, family overhaul, workplace can be another dumping ground of a whole bunch of toxicity. Sometimes we've got to look at that as well, but then we got to do our own cleanup too. We've got to say, what am I listening to on a daily basis? What am I watching on a daily basis? What am I eating on a daily basis? How am I moving my body on a daily basis? Like, what am I doing too to make sure my environment is clean, right? So supportive and loving, right? What's in my space that's inviting and nourishing for me? That can be something we focus on every day. Like, we can be very intentional about, you know what, I'm not going to watch this, crazy television show that's full of drama. There's
Especially
tons of
on YouTube, all the stuff that's on our YouTube and social
exactly.
media.
Yes, I'm not gonna watch
Yeah,
these
it's like
toxic YouTube channels. I'm gonna watch the ones that are more supportive.
that's me. I definitely need to like step away from. Okay, I'm not gonna watch the toxicity because unfortunately, that's what gets so much more attention, right? That's the thing. It's like it's sad that, but we don't. We can take power back though. We don't have to be the ones paying attention to the toxicity and negativity. We could be the ones, watching things that are nourishing and that are beautiful, that are empowering, that are helpful to us, right? So it's like that. That's in our control. That's within our power to like choose, right?
Yep.
Yep. And that's such a it's just taking accountability, right? It's just about being real with ourselves, be like, hey, I am watching this toxic stuff, and asking why am I doing this, right? But it is really about taking accountability about what are we choosing to do, what's in our power, right? So it's like that's a big thing with us, like taking back the responsibility of our lives, right? And not blaming other people or like, this is not my parents' fault. Okay, we're grown as adults, right? We got to take responsibility. If we do have those inner child wounds or stuff, it's our responsibility to heal them, right?
Yes.
It's our responsibility to find who we are. It's our responsibility to choose empowering things. And so we have a lot of responsibility. With responsibility is power, right? So I think that's so important, like for us to realize that we have a lot of responsibility that to make sure that our community, because it's bigger than us, right? It's not just us, because a lot of us are very like individual. We're only thinking like, oh, this is only about me. But it's like I want us to think a little bigger. Like it's bigger than us. We want to reach out. That's why I'm doing this, because I want to help other people and making sure other people could watch this and they could feel empowered. They could feel like secure and confident in their identity and who they are, and have some tools and resources and support for them, because I really want us to think bigger about people around us, not just people who are the same race as us or only biracial, but just all of us, like understanding, because we always want that understanding, right? Because it's like that's the thing. It's like, oh, we always feel misunderstood. Nobody's really understanding us, but it's like we have to be able to give that understanding to others, so it could be a mutual thing. Because there's other people who go through things that we don't relate to whatsoever, but it's like if we can reach out that understanding to them, even if we don't relate to them, they're different from us, and we want people to receive that from us. Like they could help have that empathy and understanding for us, even though we're different and we don't relate. But that's how we build those connections, right? That are like right? So
you got it.
A
quick tip to, if you're cleaning up your space, because again, this is like something people can start to do right away. Ask yourself, how do I feel after I do this? Like, how did this podcast that I just listened to make me feel? How did this YouTube video I just watched make me feel? How does my home environment make me feel? And if it's all positive, great, keep doing it. If it makes you angry, get you worked up, maybe we need to tweak some things.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. I totally agree with that, because I feel like negative emotions become addictive, like anger. Because I think that, they become addictive, like anger or sadness. You got to be careful about, or you can become addicted to positivity, right? You can become addicted to like happiness and feeling good, or you got to be really careful about like, what are you feeding yourself with, because your body, like, it becomes addictive, right? So that's why it's like we got to be really careful about what are we consuming, content, the type of content we're consuming. So I want to be really careful about the content I'm putting out too, as me as like a small YouTuber. And I do want to, I care, because it's like I really do care about people. I really do want people to feel uplifted and empowered about what they're watching. And I hope that I hope people out there get something. You guys reach out to Liz. I'm gonna put all the links below. This is a great conversation. I loved every second of it.
Okay. Absolutely. I loved it.
I'm going to be reaching out to you again on your better week. We're gonna be a life coach. I think you're a fantastic life coach.
Thank you.
You're wonderful. And yeah, especially you focus on women issue too. So
Yeah.
I love that so much. And yeah, I think you answered all my questions beautifully. And thank you so much for being part of this conversation.
Awesome.
And yeah, I'm gonna let you go. I feel great. I feel good. Okay.
Good.
I feel good about this conversation, and I hope everybody watching does too. And yep, I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the day, whatever they're doing. And it was awesome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this conversation,
That
and
was so good. Yes.
I'd love to help wherever I can as well. So
Absolutely. I'm gonna put all the links below. We're gonna put all the resources out there. And
perfect.
thank you so much for putting yourself out there and helping people who really need this type of help. And you're doing a lot of good out in the world. And we really appreciate you. And you're making a
Likewise.
big impact in the world. And thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.